considering investing in a public company listed on a US stock exchange, then I highly advise that you learn how to navigate and analyze financial statements. And you're in luck, because that's exactly what we'll teach you in this video. Welcome to Girl Investors. This channel is dedicated to teaching you about investing and money. Please remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. This really drives us to make more of this type of content for you. And while there are many different kinds of financial statements required by the United States SEC, this video will focus on the 10K or the annual filing. And we will cover other financial statements in a future video. So by the end of this video, you will know about the structure and contents of a 10K and be able to find filings that you need for your analyses. Then if you watch until the end, I will tell you how I read a 10K. I hope you want to learn more, and I invite you to keep watching. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Before we get ahead of ourselves, you should understand that public companies in the United States are required to submit quarterly and annual filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC. The SEC statement is that all investors, whether large institutions or private individuals, should have access to certain basic facts about an investment prior to buying it. And there are other disclosure requirements as well, such as mergers and acquisitions, IPOs, or important events known as material events. Consequently, these filings are available to the public on the company website, usually under Investor Relations and Financial Filings. So here's an example of me on the Moderna Therapeutics website, the company that is developing a COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. So I click on the Investors tab on the main website, and then I click on SEC Filings, and now I can select the filing type that I want to view and the year of the document. And it's just as simple as that. So you can select the format you want your document to be viewed in, such as a PDF file, Word, Excel, and so forth. Alternatively, you can also search for a filing on the SEC's official website, sec.gov/EDGAR, and I will leave links to the SEC site in the description box below. So here's a little preview on how to search on this site. So type in the ticker or name in the search bar, indicate that you want a 10K, and voila, you will see all the 10Ks that are listed. In general, my preference is to visit the company websites, but at least now you know that you have these two options. Common filings. In this video, we're actually focusing on the 10K, as we already mentioned. And in the 10K, you will find annual financial statements, latest share count on the front cover, and select financial data, detailed footnotes, management discussion, and analyses. In future videos, we will talk about other filings in more detail, but here's a little preview of another video that we'll be talking about. A quarterly report is known as the 10Q. The 8K are pretty much earnings press releases. Proxy statements contain the latest share count and management compensation. The 20F is another filing, which is filed by foreign issuers that trade on U.S. exchanges. And there are other ones like the 13D or 13G for investors who own greater than 5% of shares in a company. And another filing is the 13F, which is a quarterly report that all institutional investment managers with at least $100 million in assets under management must file. And there are the other ones such as the S1, S3, and S4, which are for IPOs or mergers and acquisitions. And there's also the all-important form, which I love to look at, which is the Form 4. And this is the Statement of Changes in Beneficial Ownership. So that's basically is when an executive must disclose when they buy and sell shares. And we'll discuss all of those other filings in another video. But for today, we'll focus on the 10K. So what is the 10K exactly? The 10K is an annual document that includes very detailed information about a company's financial and operational performance during that past year. I personally read many 10Ks and find them to be a very important source of information from my analysis. And this is one of the ways that I can learn about a business what the drivers for the business are, the catalysts and important events. And other information I can learn here are about the competition that the company is facing, how it manufactures, produces, and distributes its products or services. It's really a way to truly understand the business. And as an investor, you can use the 10K to analyze 1 year with another year, so year-over-year comparisons, as well as to compare between companies and what they're doing similarly or differently and how that could create competitive advantages for one company versus another. When is the 10K available? This depends on the filer's status. And what I mean by that is that the 10K should be filed 60 days after the end of the fiscal year for companies that are considered large accelerated filers, and 75 days after the end of the fiscal year for accelerated filers, and 90 days after the end of the fiscal year covered by the report for all other registrants. So basically between 2 to 3 months after the end of the fiscal year in general. And just remember, different companies have different fiscal years, so you need to take a look and figure that out on the company's website or their 10K. What is the structure of the 10K? One of the best parts of the 10K is that all companies must follow a standard format. So this makes it easy to find relevant information in different filings, because then you know exactly where to look, and you can, have a standard table of contents. And an important point to note is that the 10K is different from the annual report. The main difference is that the annual report is basically a prettied up, glossy document that doesn't have to follow strict rules for its structure and content. And there's lots of, nice pictures and graphs, etc. in there. And it's actually nice to glance through these once in a while. But I spend 99% of my time scrutinizing the 10Ks, which is basically a black and white document. The 10K has 3 parts. Each part has key disclosure items. And as I mentioned previously, the 10K has a table of contents, so you can easily select which section that you want to jump to. So part 1 includes Item 1, which is the business, and this section includes a description of the company's business, the strategy, the product offerings, whether it's seasonality, and where its operations are located, or its geographical footprint. Item 1A are risk factors, and this is an interesting section where they summarize industry and company-specific risks. Item 1B are unresolved staff comments. Item 2 are properties, and that could include details on whether their real estate is owned or leased and how that could have implications on what their assets or their balance sheet looks like. And then you have Item 3, which is legal proceedings against a company, which can be very interesting if you read some some 10Ks. Item 4 is mine safety disclosures, and obviously, this only applies if it's specific to the company who's in mining. And then you have Part 2. In Part 2, you have Item 5, which is the market for equity-related stockholder matters and purchases of equity. And this is where you can learn about the stock price, the dividend history, and company listing details, such as the exchanges that the company is listed on, such as the NASDAQ. Item 6 is selected financial data, and this is a section where you can expect to find a snapshot of the important financial data for the most recent 5 to 10 year fiscal period. Item 7 is management discussion and analysis, or the MD&A. So the MD&A is a summary and analysis of the company's financial results for the past year. So this is where you can expect to find a lot of explanations about what happened to the company in the past year, what their future plans are, and what management expects earnings to be. And I consider this section to be very important, and I really learn a lot in this section. So I suggest that you pay attention to this section. Item 7A is quantitative and qualitative disclosures about market risk. So, for example, if a company has to deal with foreign exchange, and this is also where you'll read about the interest on their investments and things like long-term debt. Item 8 is financial statements and supplementary data. So, I hope you guessed, as an investor, Item 8 is the most important section in a 10K. in my opinion. And this is where you'll find consolidated financial statements, corresponding notes, and a letter from an independent auditor. So if you're looking for the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement, this is where you should come. And if you want to learn how to read financial statements, such as the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement, I suggest you watch some of my earlier videos, and I'll list those in the description box below. So in item 8, you're also going to find 2 additional financial statements, which are the statement of shareholders' equity and the statement of comprehensive income. So the statement of shareholders' equity zooms in on all the line items that collectively make up the shareholders' equity section of the balance sheet, such as the preferred and common stock, retained earnings, treasury stock, or stock buybacks and other comprehensive income. The statement of comprehensive income, or it could be listed as the statement of comprehensive loss as well. So the comprehensive income represents the accumulation of gains and losses that aren't recognized in retained earnings, but rather in a separate line item called comprehensive income. So you know how the net income from the income statement feeds into the retained earnings section of the balance sheet? Well, the statement of comprehensive income plays the same role for the comprehensive income balance on the balance sheet. And another important topic that you will find in item 8 is the notes to consolidated financial statements, also known as the financial footnotes. So here you'll find extensive information on things like revenue recognition, meaning when does a company consider that they have sold a product. For example, when the customer clicks and pays with the credit card, or upon delivery, or exactly how do they do it, how the company counts its inventory, such as first in first out, or FIFO, or last in first out, or LIFO. Other expense descriptions, such as advertising expenses, lease expenses, taxes, earnings per share, and even things like the remaining useful life of its property, plant, and equipment, and its intangible assets. So I think this is a very good place to find additional descriptive information that could impact how you, for example, build out your models if you're an analyst. Item 9 are changes in and disagreements with accountants. Item 9A are controls and procedures. 9B are other info, usually miscellaneous things that the company needs to disclose. And then we get into part 3. In part 3, first we'll start with item 10. So item 10 is directors, executive officers, and corporate governance. So item 10 has a list of executives of a company, such as the directors or the members of the board, and their past and current professional affiliations. And additionally, the section discusses corporate governance policies that are used to ensure effective checks and balances between the board of directors and its executive officers. Item 11 is executive compensation, but you can also find a detailed version in the 14A proxy filing, which I tend to look at. Item 12 is ownership of beneficial owners, management, and stockholder matters. So this section also includes information on holders of greater than 5% of stock, and I would encourage you to take a look at to see who owns how much of a stock and how much of a stake they have in a company. Item 13 is certain relationships, related transactions, and director independence. So for example, this is where you can find out about the board of directors' procedures on transactions that may affect owners who own greater than 5% of stock. Item 14 is principal accounting fees and services. And item 15, which is the last section, is exhibits and financial statement schedules and signatures. How do I read a 10K? I equate reading 10Ks to reading an academic paper. So first thing, I don't advise reading a 10K from start to finish like a book. I have different starting points, and I spend more time on some sections versus others, and I also jump between sections. And a big influence on how I would read a 10K also has to do with my familiarity with a company. So if I am new to a company, I am going to spend a lot of time on, for example, item 1, where I want to learn about the business and the products and what their offerings are. And then what I would encourage you to do is one of the best ways to find out what works for you and the sequence that you want to read the sections or the item numbers is to read as many 10Ks as you can for the companies that you're interested in and develop a method that works for you. So what I hope that you'll find is that once you read many 10Ks, that you're going to find what works for you, and you'll also find patterns between companies that are within the same industry. And for myself, I personally like to focus on items 1, item 6, 7, and 8. And then I triangulate that information with other sources, such as other financial filings, press releases, investor relations transcripts, or what the management are saying, and maybe even other social media. So what other investors are saying on Twitter, for example, and sometimes equity research reports in articles. So here's our ask to you. Find a 10K for a public company listed on a U.S. stock exchange that you're interested in and read some of the sections for the past 3 filings. So 2020, 2019, 2018, for example. And then I'd encourage you to look for patterns and try to notice an evolution of the company, what they said back in 2017 or 2018 and what they eventually did in the forthcoming years. And get a feel for it and start to develop a framework for the direction that the company is headed in the future. So for example, if you like Tesla or Apple or Google or Pfizer or some other company, read their 10Ks and learn in detail how their business operates and how they plan to make money. And did they do what they said that they were going to do in previous years? And if they didn't, why didn't they do that? So that brings us to the end of this video. So leave a comment in the comment section on the 10Ks that you're reading and what surprises you, or what are you learning about a company? And I can promise you that you will learn so much information in these filings, and sometimes some of this may really surprise you. Remember to like this video if you learned something and subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in our next video.